Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Austin here with StarCraft 2 commentary number 9. Today's episode will feature a 2v2 replay of my own, and I do understand it has been a while since I last casted a personal replay. Well, let me tell you, it has been quite a journey since episode number 8. I do recall myself having expressed my frustrations at lag spike issues I had been suffering with fraps. Well, I went about a number of different strategies to try to conquer these. I'm not sure if they'll actually take too many effects. My ultimate solution is to buy a 7200 RPM hard drive for my Lenovo IdeaPad Y560p in the near future to have more read-write disk speed for my hard drive, which I did research, and I reformatted Windows, just a number of solutions. So I actually reformatted Windows mostly for other reasons, but hopefully my commentaries will benefit slightly from that. And so this episode will feature Hesperide, our red Terran spawning at the bottom right of Scorched Haven, who is my partner. Of course, myself, Austin, is the blue Protoss spawning at the top right of this map. Our opponents are Ragathor, the purple Zerg, and his partner, ConZ, the teal Protoss. And so both Hesperide and myself were very rusty entering this game, as I had not played in several weeks, and he had not played about a month and a half. Both as a result of school. We had and during the holidays, as I did mention, I embarked on a quest to play several favorite retro video games of mine. I will not get into detail about that. I hoped actually today to double up on my commentaries and cast 2 games in one day. Sadly, time does not allow for that, so this is the only game I'll be casting today. It has actually, I believe, been a week and a half since, or about a week and a half, or even a week since I last casted a commentary, and for me, that is a very long time. So here's ConZ's Scout entering my base. I apologize for my not monitoring the production tab. Of course, this is medium quality, by the way. I do hope you do not mind. Please bear with me for the next couple months until I get my favorite, of course, 7200 RPM. Here's the Barracks and Supply Depot from Hesperide. I'm not sure if you were paying attention to the dialogue earlier, but he actually said the only thing he can do is 3 racks. And this is my statement right here, my quite arrogant statement. Looking back on it, I said they don't look like the greatest, lol, as I believe when I had entered the opposing base, all I saw was just a hatchery and nothing special. Well, I guess I do not know my Zerg. He has a spine crawler and a spawning pool here. And it was actually funny just then, since I had it on my vision, I heard the Protoss voice, "Your allies are in battle." And it sounded weird since I actually felt, it made me feel, kind of relive the memory. And here's my Scout returning, as ConZ has 2 gateways, and I have 2, well, a gateway and a cybernetics core, and now going for that second gateway. So ConZ is getting a slightly later cybernetics core. Oh, not even slightly, just a minimally later cybernetics core. Now he has a gateway and another gateway, so 4-gate cybernetics core. Quite a reasonable strategy, and that is actually outdoing my own. I have 3 gates and a cybernetics core, so my Protoss opponent is outdoing me. Oh, no, this is just a pylon. So ConZ is beating me in terms of production, yet I believe my economy is slightly faster. I'm not sure how we can check how many workers, perhaps resources, or I apologize, it has been quite a while, as I said. Oh, there we go, income. Okay, so I have actually the most harvesters in the game with 21, and more than our Zerg player Ragathor, which is quite important. As you may hear from the best of commentators, and you will hear it from myself, Zerg have to drone up. And with just 16 harvesters, which is the lowest out of everybody, that is just not the most advisable situation. Now I'm boasting 23 total harvesters, Hesperide catching up, and so that is a great way to determine your overall macro skill. Macro and micro are quite difficult to not mix up, and so essentially my more workers will give me a boost in economy and allow me to produce more units off each gateway, while ConZ might have more difficulty. Although he does have 4 gates, it is tough for a Protoss player when you have warp gates to warp in 4 simultaneous units. And Hesperide here proclaiming he is supply blocked, and I'm not sure if you saw earlier, he said be right back, and he paused the game twice, and our opponent sadly resumed it immediately after, which I do find quite annoying. Sometimes when an opponent pauses the game, I will bear with them for a few minutes, and if it's reasonable and they just, they have to go to the washroom or they have to go answer the phone or something, that's fine. But if it stretches into like 5 minutes, if I actually get up, take a drink or something, and of course watching the screen all the while, and I see that my opponent still has the game paused, I will resume it. I don't want somebody to take advantage of my generosity to win a game. You know, if I were to just slug around and then they rejoin like 30 minutes later. And here's actually a quite interesting Nidus network from Ragathor, and so we can expect perhaps some Nidus play. There is actually a lot of empty space here and here for my team. So that is quite vulnerable, and I say almost ready, as Hesper and I had coordinated to push at the 7:30 mark, as you can see here, and so it is quickly approaching that. And so, essentially, it is difficult to gauge who is in the lead here. ConZ has just this Stalker army, and Ragathor has a mass of roaches, about 2 pages worth, well, roaches and Zerglings, within his Nidus network. So that could be quite potent if he is able to expand it. And now here's my go as I uncoordinatedly push forward, and with ground weapons level 1 in research, and Ragathor finally warping in 3 more Stalkers. So I believe a few replays ago in the 3v3 I casted with myself, Conrad, and Skidden, one of our opponents went Mass Stalker. It is quite a questionable situation, and here's my poor micro here as I advance my Stalkers too early, and now ConZ will try to pull his Stalkers back, but I'm quite opposed to this strategy. I just find Mass Stalkers are weak to so many things, and people can so easily adapt to them. Any race, essentially. If you see it with Terran, you want to go M&M. If you see it with Protoss, you can immediately resort to Stalker Immortal. If you are a Zerg player, I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a Zerg player myself, and I'm the least acquainted with their strategy. So here's my advancing with my Stalker Sentry Zealot Ball, and actually the Nidus network has now embedded itself in my base, and this Roachling group here just full-on assaulting my main as I pull one worker away. Meanwhile, Hesperide and myself both fending off ConZ's forces as I push on Ragathor's base, and so now my Zealots getting to work here on his economy, which is always the #1 thing you want to look for. As you can see here, Ragathor has actually wiped out the vast majority of my economy, and he's now pushing on my Nexus, so it is quite doubtful for me to actually be able to be a productive partner to Hesperide. But as you can see here, Ragathor's economy is now on a standstill. He's producing 8 Zerglings, but that is about it. So here are these roaches actually matching up against my forces as Hesperide's Marauders rush in and save the day, and now Ragathor's 8 hatched Zerglings quickly overcome that last Stalker. So if you look here, Ragathor and myself are the eliminated partners. Essentially, we can produce very little, and I rebuilt my base briefly here actually, and then cancelled it as I realized that Ragathor had been fended off, so I opted to rebuild it here with this electromagnetic field spiraling out of control outside of this assimilator. Not sure if you noticed that. And so the Nidus worm actually remains embedded in my base, but at this point, all Ragathor is able to produce is just 1 drone at a time, and just several drones as a normal Zerg player would do. And so now I have actually rebuilt my base here, and it is essentially at this point an economic battle between Hesperide and ConZ. So ConZ quickly warping in more Stalkers to recuperate his army with just 1 sentry, and Hesperide building up just this massive recovery ball of M&M. So immediately you can see that Hesperide is expanded way earlier, and ConZ is only now boasting 2 pylons and an Nexus, while Hesperide already has his orbital with a mule and a number of SCVs mining off of it, while his saturated main is currently just being mined out. And so Hesperide has essentially outdone ConZ in terms of economic play leading up to this point, while myself and Ragathor have kind of been the bottom 2 of the barrel, fighting for control. So I have yet to receive my Nexus, just eagerly awaiting it, and this Nidus worm still stands, and as we can see, it is quickly loaded up with another harass force. So at least Ragathor is able to produce a harass. I have yet to produce anything, not even a main base, and immediately I call for help as he vies to unpower my base, and Hesperide and, well, my Stalkers are kind of forced by Hesperide's forces moving to help out, as Ragathor's roaches do not actually take down this pylon, I don't believe. No, they pull out in time. So then I see this Nidus worm as my final probe dies. No, not my final probe. Almost my final probe dies. And I immediately tell him to kill the Nidus worm. So I'm finally able to warp in some forces. I do believe I had a quite sizable economy before my base perished. So I just have these 2 probes mining. Well, my Protoss opponent just has this Stalker this Stalker, 1 Sentry, and Zealot group with a Twilight Council researching Charge. So I'm not sure he would. Charge Watt Archon is a viable option. I'm not sure if he's going to. No. Oh yes, there's the Dark Shrine. So we can clearly expect Charge Watt Archon in his near future. But still, this expansion is only now beginning to mine. Well, if we look at Hesperides, he still has that around that same group of SCVs. But let us look again at his saturated main, and he's had this group of SCVs, now joined by 2 more, mining for so much longer. I believe it's been clearly a clear 4 minutes since ConZ actually got the natural, and I ask, should we go? As I only begin to recuperate my forces while this creep still dies. So I just have these 3 gates, this 1 cybernetics core, and now an exponentially growing amount of probes, almost like bacteria. I, for some reason, remember that. It was just floating around in the abyss of my conscience. And so actually, seeing this psionic storm research, it seems as though the Dark Shrine was cancelled in favor of a Templar Archives. And I apologize for this brief interruption. It is a friend of mine asking me if I am here. Zapper has actually interrupted once before. I forgot to tell him prior to this replay that I am doing a commentary. If you could please refresh me on how to actually make yourself appear offline or something of the sort, it would be useful for future episodes. And so here is just Hesperide's push on ConZ's natural. So again, having played in the game, I do not believe we realized how effective a move this was to attack ConZ's natural, not Ragathor's. Because I remember, if you want me to recount some of my thoughts during this battle, I do remember that I thought Ragathor was far more into the game than he actually was. Ragathor and I had comfortable situations. He was able to produce somewhat of a harass, and I wasn't, but we were both essentially out of the game. So here is, I believe I do not have any more forces pushing. It is just mostly Hesperide. So now he's moving into our opponent's base, and where are these High Templar? They have just been floating about, casting no spells, and actually, until now, I did not realize how low health High Templar had. And there is a nice Psionic Storm, so finally the High Templar are being put to use, but they are expensive, they have low health, they're risky. But that was quite worth it. I'm not sure how many kills he got, as he died quite quickly. And if you see right here, this comedic text and the MVP award goes to, I was just saying that as I was laughing at the keyboard, seeing Hesperide's total domination while I did very little except kind of, what is the word, turtle, as actually a few StarCraft 2 friends did say to me today. Turtling is just when you rely on your partner. And so ConZ here losing his economy immediately, all of his probes forced off the line. Now Hesperide finally just picking off some of his probes, which although his attack force here will be lost, so many probes for ConZ will be lost. So now finally Ragathor is somewhat back into the game, but yet he still does not have a military, and he's building slightly off of this expansion, still droning up. And now finally I've actually reached the expansive economy point. I have the saturated main, I'm building the natural, I have 2 more gateways in production and a forge once more. And now Hesperide, look at his formidable army. He has 3 siege tanks, and by the way, Jean Rien means I have nothing, which is true. I had nothing. Hesperide had a formidable ball of 3 siege tanks, M&Ms, all upgraded with weapons level 1 and armor level 1. So as we can see, he clearly dominated this game. Rusty as he was, Hesperide has rusty as he was. I apologize for my misphrasing. Rusty as he was, Hesperide was on fire in this game. He was able to come through when I as a partner needed him most, and when our team as a whole, both of us, needed, one of us to come through. That made very little sense, but I do apologize. I'm quite tired. So here we have a planetary fortress and another command center in production. So he has absolutely obliterated ConZ in terms of the economy race, and I do not mean to be rude to ConZ in the least. He has played a solid game. It's just that without even knowing it, myself and Hesperide were able to take out his economy, not realizing how essential it was for us to do so. So it was just kind of bad luck for ConZ, as it was bad luck for me to lose pretty much my entire race. But now I am fully back into the game, more so than my opponent's partner, who only has, so pretty much it's almost like a 2 1v1s combined together. Ragathor versus myself and ConZ versus Hesperide. So I believe that ConZ kind of took a misstep in choosing the High Templar route over Dark Templar. I believe Charge Watt Archon would have been so much more effective against Hesperide's M&M force than these stray High Templar, in terms of cost, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of just general efficiency again, as Dark Templar have more health. As we had no detection, Dark Templar alone would have made an excellent harass. And I say watch for High Templars, as I believe I had scouted this, well, I've vaguely seen it, and I said hit their naturals. If you're on Scorched Haven, it's essential to hit their naturals. And there's another Psionic Storm just wiping out a stray amount of forces. And I said hit natural, as we had done so before, and it had completely stalled our opponent's economies. And they had not kept us bottled up. They had not hit any of our naturals, any of Hesperides, not my main once more. You know, Ragathor had not tried the Nidus Worm yet again. I had put nothing there. You know, I left myself largely vulnerable to an attack. I had no photon cannons there. I had nothing there. So now Hesperide finally pushing on our opponent's base. Here's the Ultralisk Cavern, quickly going to presumably fall, as it does. And we polish off here Ragathor, the remnants of Ragathor's base. And even then, when you are pushing and you kind of have enough forces to conquer your opponents, never split up. That is the key. Hesperide and I have learned. I'm no masters. I'm just a Silver Week 2v2 player. But trust me when I say take out one partner. Because a 2v1, no matter how good the other partner is always an advantage. So if you have the opportunity, if you're kind of sitting around here, you have that opportunity to put pressure on the one player. Even if you'll lose your whole attacking force to the other partner's force, it doesn't matter, because taking out that one player beyond belief, you know, like Ragathor did, wiping out my entire base, that left us in almost a 2v1. And had Hesperide not come through as he did, we would have absolutely lost the game. Any strategy from ConZ and Ragathor combined would have defeated us. But Hesperide had just come through with this expansive economy. He now has 3 expansions, 3 operating expansions, 1 sitting idle, as I just constantly supply just a few stalkers, and it is sadly the most I can do at this point. So now this saturated main for myself is kind of losing workers, and I had only 2 probes on my natural, so not the best game for myself, but it is really Hesperide that came through in this game. He has 2-1 now, so even the upgrades, I have 1-0-0, and our opponents I believe has 0-0-0, and I'm not even sure if I can test what. No, Ragathor has nothing left, just one single drone and an overlord over here, I believe. So he's essentially rendered out of this game. Well, actually, he has a group of overlords here, but nonetheless, let us look at just this constant reinforcements. I even saw an SCV in there somewhere. Let us see if we can locate that. Yeah, there's just 2 SCVs, 3 SCVs, no siege tanks. It's just these SCVs just joining the fight. And there's the GG from ConZ, and he leaves the game. I GG in response, and there's the teary-eyed smiley, as I had thought us out of the game, and Ragathor leaves the game in rapid succession. So ultimately, just looking back briefly on that replay, as I must sign off quite soon, I do not want to drag this video on too long. It was a solid game on both sides, but Hesperide came through economically. His upgrades, his expansions, his consistency essentially won the game for our team. His consistent pressure on the opposing base, his destroying naturals, and even my recovery to an extent. Not to be arrogant, my recovery to an extent helped just reinforce with just a select few amount of stalkers, but it still went quite the long way. So the highlight of this game, Hesperide's play. ConZ still did quite well, just making the wrong choice here with the Templar Archives, and Ragathor was able to put on an effective harass, just wiping me out of the game for the longest of time. So that does conclude our episode 9. I will see you next time, ladies and gentlemen. This is Austin here with his 9th episode of StarCraft 2 commentaries. I will see you in episode 10 shortly, quite soon. I hope you enjoyed it.